Hello everyone, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly and welcome to the short game facility here at JCB Golf and Country Club. And this video about how to structure the perfect 1 hour short game session. So if you're looking to shoot lower scores this season, you're going to need to work on your chipping and your bunker play, and this video should certainly help. Now the advice that we've got coming here comes from Howells. He's the PGA professional based here at JCB Golf and Country Club, and he's going to talk through how he would structure a 1 hour session and give you all the advice that you'll need to get yourself up and down more often this season. Okay, so the first 15 minutes of your short game practice session, John, you think should be devoted to technique, okay?
Absolutely.
And now, I guess there's quite a few different ways of doing it, but if you're watching this, chances are you're looking for something that's as safe as possible, as repeatable as possible, to make it as consistent as possible. So what would you advise?
So I'd advise just understanding some really good concepts to begin with. As we know, there's multiple ways to make a chip in action work, but what we need to know is some good concepts to support the action. So what we're looking for is, in a small chip shot like this, we're trying to get the golf club to work around our body on a semicircle, and we want the bottom of that semicircle to just meet the ground, a nice soft interaction with the turf so that the bounce can be used and we can hit a nice solid shot. Obviously we see problems when people have that semicircle dipped below ground, i.e. too low underneath. You're going to have to take some kind of driven divot to hit that shot, and that's no good. And conversely, we don't want the bottom of the semicircle above ground because you're just going to thin it. So we're trying to get that match up with the ground as best we can.
So in order to do that, what's a good way of thinking about it in order to get your body in a position, your hands working in a way that is going to make that club bottom out at the right moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to setup. So the way that we set up to the ball, obviously having a pretty narrow stance, having the ball in the middle of those feet is a good way to go, and trying to get your center of gravities aligned one on top of each other. So your head is on top of your hips and your hips are on top of your feet. That's a really good way to start because it's going to give us a chance to get that semicircle meeting the ground. I see a lot of players who have a kind of a squiff position where their head is way too far back or their head is way too far forward, and that's obviously going to affect the ability to control that semicircle.
Okay, so John, go hit one for us and just talk us through.
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
technique.
So I would always take a couple of practice swings, just making sure that I'm meeting the ground correctly. Nice little soft brushes of the ground. And I'm just doing this from a flat lie here, from a standard sort of baseline lie. Just trying to see if I can check the divot afterwards, see if there's any evidence of a big thick divot that's been taken. If I'm making a nice little soft interaction using the bounce, as I said, then I know that my baseline technique is pretty well, organized for the rest of the session.
And I can confirm there's no big divot there. And I think you just noticed just how simple the action is there that John's using. If you can copy that, then you should be able to strike your chip shots that little bit better. Okay, John, so you've been through the kind of baseline technique for hitting a normal chip shot, basic chip shot. Let's run through the same thing for bunker play, because if you're spending time on your short game, it's consistency that you're after. So how do you set up the same to each bunker shot that you play?
Absolutely, so we've got to control some of the variables. One of the things I like to always do with players is make sure that we've got a consistent hold on the club, i.e. not gripping up at the top 1 minute and then gripping down at the bottom the next minute. We want to make sure that the ball position is reasonably consistent, just inside your left heel. And thirdly, trying to make sure that your distance from the ball is the same from shot to shot.
Right,
I see people changing that all the time. So I've got a quick drill to show you for that. What you can do is wrap the club just around the ball, and then just mark on the ground a little position there in the sand. You can see there, that's where my heel is going to go, so that I've now got a pretty consistent position to put that left heel in. So I've got a line just as a reference of where the ball is to that heel line, and now I can just plonk my left heel just on the inside of that little T that I've marked on the ground there, and that's going to give me a real bit of consistency.
And a quick question for you then, John, how much should people be thinking about opening the face, and if so, how much? Because I think it's one of those things, they get told to open the face in the bunker. Is that making it more complicated and more difficult? If it's not, how do they do it?
I think opening it a certain amount, maybe 5 to 10 degrees at least, is a good way to go. The reason being that's going to give you a little bit more loft, and more importantly, it's going to give you a little bit more of the use of the bounce.
Right.
Obviously, if we start opening it super amounts, then obviously we're going to hit really high shots, but our margin for error is a little bit trickier to get.
Okay, fine. So how do you open that face then?
So what I would do is grip it after I've opened the face. So turn the club to begin with, and then grip it as if I haven't done anything. And now I've got, you know, about a 10 to 15 degree open club face there from which I can hit some shots.
And now you're just going to hit some shots, hitting the same, trying to run through the same process.
Yeah, I would try and take it like a bit of a range session. You know, get yourself a good amount of golf balls, try and make sure that you're hitting from the same spot, the same lie, trying to hit the same length of shot. And all you're looking to control here is where that divot is and how deep that divot is.
Okay, go on then, hit one for us.
Okay, so I'm setting up into position, getting that club face open, crouching down into my normal position, a little softness to the elbows.
Lovely. And I think you'll notice there through the camera just how simple the action is, and if you can repeat that, then you should be able to get out bunkers every time. Right, so for the next 15 minutes, John wants you to focus on some sloping lies. I mean, how often when we play golf do we have a perfectly flat lie when we chip? So you do need to know how to play these shots. John, the shot that you face here is a sort of straightforward upslope, but there are some things that can go wrong in this scenario if you're not prepared for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and all too often we try and use the same technique that we would do from a flat lie, and that can work in certain instances, but you need to understand the limitations of that. So if we were to set up to this like a normal chip shot where our spine is pretty much vertical, our body is pretty much upright, basically what's going to happen as that semicircle goes back and down, we're now going to dive into the ground and we're going to get quite a sharp leading edge divot. And obviously that's got its limitations.
Yeah, as we've already talked about, that thing about the sort of bottom of the arc being slightly below the ball, you are in danger of the club digging or catching it fat or thin. So what's a way of approaching this shot or changing things to make it a little bit safer?
So what I would prefer is to get your body to match the slope. So
Right.
what you're going to do is basically think of the slope as being this shaft of the golf club. If my body was stood at 90 degrees to it for a flat slope, I'm going to basically tilt my body to match the slope that I'm faced with so that the club can actually work up the contours of the ground.
Right,
So
okay.
it'll look something like this in practical situation. I'm going to go a little bit wider with my feet and probably shift and allow a little bit more weight to sit onto my right side. And now as I take some practice swings, I can see that the golf club actually works up the slope. I'm now able to use the bounce like we spoke about.
Yes.
And we can actually get a nice reliable
Yeah,
shot.
and I can see how the club is just bruising the grass again on top, so you're back to that strike that you're looking for right from the beginning.
Exactly.
Now, a few things are going to change about this shot. So the ball's going to come out a bit higher, presumably.
Yeah.
So are you changing clubs to allow for that or not?
Absolutely, yeah. If I wanted the shot to come out the same, I would go with a slightly lower lofted club. If I felt that the higher loft might actually help the situation, then I might keep the same loft. But
Okay.
it all depends on that situation, and that's why you've got to practice it, right?
Go on then, hit one for us.
Let's try. I've got the 50 degrees, so I've gone for the lower lofted club. I'm going to get that weight just rocked onto the right foot and try and get the club to work up the slope.
Beautifully nipped as well, so that's just coming out with quite a nice amount of check on it, and there's plenty of control. Even though you're making this change to your address position, you're not losing any control. So from a downhill lie then, John, do the opposite rules apply?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously we're using this little scenario again. If I tilt the lie of the shaft of the club, my spine needs to match 90 degrees to that. So in this instance, I'm going to stack the weight onto my left foot. Ball position still remains fairly neutral, and I'm tilting my spine to match the slope. It's going to come out a little bit lower, a little bit flatter.
But again, it's the strike that's exactly the same, and I guess it's the consistency of contacts that really help you build the confidence that you need around the green. The next 15 minutes is all about distance control from when you're chipping and from the bunker. So John, let's start with chipping, and you found a very specific scenario here that you want people to practice. What is it?
Yeah, I almost want you to kind of liken it to other sports. I think of lawn bowls when it comes to distance control in the short game. You think of the short jack, the medium jack and the long jack. We almost want to have a few different set distances that we kind of know off by heart.
Right, okay, that's interesting. So the distances here then are 15 yards, 30 yards and 45 yards, which is nicely spaced out. And you're going to have, I guess, 3 different ways of hitting those yardages. What's your approach?
So there's multiple different ways to get the distance you require. I personally, through a bit of testing, I've realized I like to change club to do that. Obviously there's a little bit of change in the length of swing as needs, and you might prefer to do it that way, and that's absolutely fine. But I've got this first shot which is 54 degree, I can land it just on the fringe, and then as we move into the second and the third flag I would have to take slightly different clubs, particularly on a windy day like today.
Yep.
Better try and keep that ball flight under control.
Okay, so hit the first one then for us, John.
Okay, so it's on a little bit of an upslope, as I say, so a little bit of weight on my right foot, but I'm just going to try and get a feel for the length of swing. Just landing it on the fringe. Rather just beyond the fringe.
Just beyond the fringe, but nipped
say.
it perfectly, so it did spin up. So
Yeah.
how are you changing things for that second flag?
So second flag, I'm kind of caught in two minds. I could go 50 degree or I could go pitch and wedge. Obviously the landing point is going to be different for both. Now, bearing in mind I've just hit that first one too hard, I think I'll take the 50 degree, the slightly higher lofted
And
club.
are you identifying that landing spot now?
In my mind, yeah, I've kind of got a picture maybe just slightly to the right of that golf ball I've just hit.
Right, okay.
I think if I land it there with a medium to low trajectory, I think it should run up that slope towards the second flag. So yeah, I'm trying to engage that kind of creative part of my mind
Okay.
as I'm practicing in this section of the practice session. A couple of practice swings, I say, working the club up the slope. And
That's good.
a little bit thin, but we got away with it.
Well, it's pretty good. And I guess the point here is that you're consistently kind of just judging what to do. You'll make small compensations, small adjustments, changing clubs. You'll get a much better feel. So as you work through this process, your field distance control is just going to improve, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be out here and create. You've got to be out here practicing that artistic side of your short game as well.
So come on then, that
Let's go
back
for
flag.
that back one. So this, I've tested this earlier. This is definitely a 9-iron. It's a tricky shot, you know, anywhere inside sort of 10 feet would, in my opinion, be a really good shot. Again, just trying to get the club to work up the slope, sort of picking a landing point, possibly just on that upslope before that second flag, slightly to the right of the flag, I think. Oh, I've underhit that one. Is it going to roll out?
But do you know, it's interesting because you did hit that bit heavy, but you got away with it because the right club, the technique is giving you that slight margin for error on the strike, and you've
Just working up the
You've
slope
got
a
about
little
10 feet left there, John, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, got lucky.
So when it comes to playing bunker shots, we've already stressed the importance of taking the same amount of sand every time to help improve your consistency. But John, when it comes to changing the distance that you're hitting your bunker shots, should the amount of sand that you take change?
I don't think so. I think you want to try and keep that as consistent as possible. There's not very many good players who would do it that way. You hear stories about it, but it's a hard thing to do. I would focus more on trying to change the length of swing, maybe changing the amount that you open the club face.
Okay.
And then if you get to that end point where you're sort of not able to reach the shot like we have in this scenario here, you might need to actually change club at the very end if you're hitting sort of 40 or 45 yard sort of splash shots.
Okay, so the more you open the club face, the higher it will go and the shorter the shot will be.
Absolutely.
If that's the thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run through these 3 flags. So we're doing the same shot that we just did, but in reverse, as it were.
Absolutely.
That first flag is very short. It's a really delicate little bunker shot, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage people when they're practicing this as well, take some practice swings. I know you're not allowed to on the course, but get a feel and really dial in the length of swing that you want to take. It's very hard to sometimes take a short backswing in a bunker.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a couple of practice swings here. I've got the club face open because I know that'll give me the loft and the bounce that I need.
Same setup as we've already talked about.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
consistent.
Trying to take a real sort of small swing at a low energy.
Very good. Spin up. It did. That's pretty good. I mean, it's gone on probably a couple more feet than you'd want it to, but it's as I say, tricky bunker shot playing it onto a downslope. The next one on, are you using the same club for that then?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably go to a 54 and keep the club face open, but I'd feel pretty confident just squaring the club face up slightly. So it's maybe now only like 5 degrees open, slightly open so I can use some of that bounce. And I'm going to take a pretty fullish looking swing.
Right, so the length of the swing gets longer, the club face gets a little squarer.
Yeah, so I'm using 2 variables here. I'm using longer swing a little bit more club head speed at impact, and I'm also just squaring the club face up. We're into a little bit of a wind that's getting stronger here, so I'm probably going to need to give it a little bit more energy.
Yeah, go on then, let's have a look.
Okay, so again, take the practice swings to really dial in what you're trying to do. Obviously a lot more sand, a lot more energy.
So yeah, just looking at the way that John's setting up, you can see, I mean, the club face is a fraction squarer, but it's pretty consistent, the setup, and the amount of force going into the swing is just that little bit more. Strikes me as being quite a consistent way of playing the shot. Yeah, that's beautifully played, John. That's great. And it just looks, to me, it looks like a fairly safe shot because you're not changing too much. Yes, that club face has changed a bit.
Yeah.
And it is a bit more of a forceful swing, but the setup hasn't.
Yeah, that's the idea, trying to get that consistency of the amount of sand.
Now we're going to test you out really here now, because that third flag is a distance that we all hate. You know, it's that sort of 45-yard bunker shot that even the pros don't like. So I see you've changed club.
Yes.
What's the approach here?
Well, yeah, you've really set me up with one here, Neil. This is about a 45 to sort of 50-yard bunker shot. I'm obviously going to try and play it as a splash shot. I think I need to open the club face just a little bit and take pretty much a full length swing. I want to use the bounce, obviously, that's on the sand wedge. So maybe like 10 to 15 degrees open with that club face.
With a 54 degree?
With a 54 degree, I think that's about right. Obviously, I've learned this over time. And you need to mess around with the variables as well.
Yeah.
Still taking those practice swings.
I can see it's that setup's the same. It looks very similar to the last shot.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Let's give it a try. It's a hard shot. You've set me up.
Lower ball flight coming out with a little bit more run on it, and it's just toppled over the edge of that slope and down. I think by the time that's finished rolling, John, that's not going to be too far away. Look, you've probably still got 10 feet or so left to save your par, but I think from this position, you'd be really pleased with that.
Yeah, I would take that from this situation. I'm just trying to put it on the green, give myself a chance of a holeable putt.
Yeah, so I think the basic premise here is get in the practice bunker, try out a few different distances, get used to what John's been telling you there. If you can do that, you should be able to improve your distance control from the bunker. Okay, so for the last 15 minutes, John, you want everyone watching this to focus on their game under pressure. So having a game that is going to put them under a little bit of pressure, test out their technique and give them a score. What is the game?
Yeah, we're bringing things to a culmination at the end of the session. We want to earn our way off the practice ground. So we've started off with technique, then moved to awkward lies and distance control, and now finally we're going into a pressure game. So we've got 3 short chip shots, 3 sort of long chip shots, and 3 bunker shots. And what I want you to do is throw those 9 golf balls around the green in those various locations and hole out every single one. Each shot that you play is a par 2, so we're calling this game par 18.
Yeah, so the idea is if you are super on it, you might get round an 18, although most of you watching this probably won't. I certainly wouldn't be able to get round an 18.
Yeah.
But if you can get as close as possible to that, then you've got a score to beat the next time that you play, right?
Yeah, tour average would be 21 for this game, which would be 66% scrambling from missing the green. So if you can aim for sort of somewhere in the mid-20s, that's a really good score. But obviously it's something you can keep an eye on over time and keep an eye on it for any mistakes or any improvements that you might be making. Obviously it's going to help you with confidence because now you've got some factually based confidence from these scores.
Now I can tell that some people watching this might be thinking, well, that's not that much pressure. Pressure is when you're on the golf course facing a 5-footer to save your par on the last hole or to win a match or something like that. But actually this does create an element of pressure and it's crucial when you practice.
Yeah, you betcha. I think after playing it for a few times, you're going to have that personal best that you've scored before and you're going to want to beat it. And you'll get to that last 8th or 9th golf ball and you'll know that you need to get up and down to beat your best score, and it definitely does add that element of pressure.
So what's your best at par 18?
22.
Not bad, not bad. So if you can bring par 18 into the end of your practice session, add a little bit of pressure, and it should help your game for when you get out on the golf course. So there you have it, some great advice there from John on how to improve your short game. So no matter whether you're facing a chip shot or a bunker shot, you should have the tools to get you up and down that little bit more often. If it's your first time to the Golf Monthly YouTube channel, please do hit the subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss any of our videos. Hit the like button if you've liked the video. But that's it now from JCB Golf and Country Club. We'll see you next time.